My name is Jim Apodaca, and I'm the president and founder of Apodaca Consulting. I'm also an OKR coach and Agile Transformation Specialist, and I've been fortunate to partner with Synergita to bring you this video series on OKRs. For today's series, we'll be looking at the foundations of OKRs, so let's get started. So our learning objectives for today are why OKRs and why now, and why it's important for organizations to understand that question when adopting a framework like OKRs. We'll also take a look at some OKR definitions, and we'll take a look at the different types of OKRs, including aspirational and committed OKRs. We'll talk about the importance of creating shared OKRs, and we'll also look at some OKR examples using the Synergita tool. Why OKRs and why now? It's a question that every organization needs to consider when adopting a framework like OKRs. Because OKRs are a change management framework, it's important to understand that you're about to take your organization through significant change. The way that you plan and strategize is going to be different. The roles and responsibilities of your team members are going to change, and the tools and the processes that you will use are also going to change. If you're looking to adopt OKRs because Google did it or because you read a book, well, you're probably looking to adopt OKRs for the wrong reason. However, if you just closed your Series A and you're looking to be the dominant leader in your industry by 2024, and in order to do so, you need to scale your tech stack as well as your product and engineering org, well, then OKRs might be the right framework for you. So let's look at some more OKR definitions. Objectives and key results. They're a change management framework used by organizations and teams to create consistency and alignment between strategy and execution. What does that mean exactly? Well, to start off, OKRs are transparent, meaning that company goals as well as team goals are visible throughout the organization, and that's by design. That promotes cross-functional collaboration, which is key in developing shared OKRs. OKRs require discipline and commitment, meaning that it's not a set-it-and-forget-it framework. OKRs require regular check-ins, as well as updates to tools and processes. But more importantly, OKRs require a commitment from the organization that they will invest in the framework and commit to it. When you adopt an OKR framework, you're investing a lot of time and resources to do so. So it's important that you commit to it to get the most out of the framework. OKRs define what we say yes and no to, meaning that if it isn't good for the company and it doesn't align with our company OKRs, then why are we doing that? And in the beauty of doing that and taking that approach, no longer do we see these pet projects that often tend to creep in. And last but not least, OKRs embrace autonomy and psychological safety. And psychological safety, that's the belief that it's okay to take risks without fear of retribution or negative consequences. And that's so important in OKRs. And that's important because we're asking our teams to be aspirational, to stretch, to do something out of their comfort zone. For OKRs to be successful, psychological safety is a must. And if you want to learn more about psychological safety, there's a Harvard professor named Amy Edmondson, and in 1999 she wrote an excellent paper on psychological safety and team dynamics. It's definitely worth checking out. And if you want to learn more about change management in OKRs, there's a video in this series called OKRs and Change Management. Okay, so now that we know what OKRs are, let's take a look at what OKRs are not. OKRs are not your KPIs. Company key performance indicators are typically the health metrics of the organization, and oftentimes they serve as lagging indicators. In contrast, OKRs measure what's going on at that moment in time. They measure in real time, and they're typically for the life of the OKR cycle, which is typically quarterly. OKRs are not a list of tasks. As OKR coaches, we commonly see this. This is a common anti-pattern that we see with organizations that adopt the framework. And what we end up doing is we end up taking everything that we're going to do and we create a list and it becomes our OKRs. That's not your OKRs. Your OKRs are your objectives and your key results. All of these things that we're doing, these tasks, these are the activities that we do to help achieve those OKRs. And last but not least, OKRs are not to be linked to individual performance management, and that's for good reason. As an employee, if I know that my compensation is tied to the outcome of my OKRs, I don't know that I'm going to be as aspirational as I could. However, if you're insistent on linking performance management to your OKRs, there are ways that you can do that. There's a right way and a wrong way to do that. And if you are considering that, you want to give consideration to CFRs. That's conversation, feedback, and recognition. It's key if you are looking to link OKRs and performance management. So you're probably thinking to yourself, you know what, Jim, this is all fascinating stuff, but I still don't know what OKRs are. It's a great point. Let's take a look. So the objective, you want to think of that as the heart, right? It's that qualitative goal that you want to achieve. By nature, it should be ambitious, but it also needs to be actionable by the team. We don't want to be setting our OKRs to the point where they're so ambitious that we're unable to hit that goal, right? So ambitious, but actionable by the team. And it comes in two flavors, aspirational or committed. And typically you want to limit your OKRs to around 2 to 3 per cycle. You can adjust that depending on the maturity of your OKR program. And if you're new to OKRs, you'll probably want to err on the side of caution. Less is more when you're new to OKRs, and so you'll probably want to limit your OKRs to around 1 to 2 per cycle for the first couple of cycles. So let's take a look at what makes a good objective. First of all, is it inspiring? Does it tug at our heartstrings, right? Again, thinking of the objective as the heart. Why does it matter and why now? Are we responding to some opportunity in the market that we just can't miss, an opportunity to partner with a larger organization? Are we responding to a threat in the market? Or did we just experience a global pandemic and we totally need to pivot, right? So why does it matter and why now? And does it connect with our mission and vision? People can join any company that they want, but they join your organization because they connect with your mission and vision. So incorporate that into the objectives whenever you can. And is it in our language? If you have language that is unique to your company, make sure you use it. It builds better rapport with the objectives, right, with your OKRs. So make sure that you use that language. So let's take a look at a couple of examples. So here we have the aspirational objective, and in this case it's to provide small businesses with the opportunity to grow and succeed by becoming the market leader for small business. And with an objective like this, it drives the conversation around small businesses with the opportunity to grow and succeed. How do we define success there? What does succeed mean exactly? And more importantly, what does it mean to become the market leader? How do we define that, right? And so with an aspirational objective like this, we're driving conversations that normally we don't have, right? What does success actually look like? What does it mean to be the market leader, right? So aspirational objective. In contrast, you have the committed objective, right? And in this case, it's to provide our customers with the confidence of security and compliance, right? Well, so what does that mean exactly? Well, in this case, the use case could be that we have to implement SOC compliance or HIPAA compliance, right? And typically with these types of projects, they typically have a finite date, right, that we absolutely have to hit. And so it's a great example for a committed objective. Okay, so moving on to key results. So with the key results, you'll want to think of that as the head, right? That is the quantitative outcome that we are going for. That's the metric that we've defined that says this is what success looks like, right? That's that finish line that we've defined. And typically it's 2 to 3 per objective. So similar to objectives, you'll want to keep your key results to around 2 to 3 per cycle. And there too, if you're new to OKRs, less is more. 1 to 2 is probably how you want to do that. And then the emphasis here is on outcome over output. So remember that list of tasks that we were talking about, this giant list? That's the output that we're doing, right? And the outcome is the metric that we've defined as part of the key result. The outcome is whether or not we've hit that goal or not, whether we've moved from A to B with that particular metric. So let's take a look at what makes a good key result. Well, what does awesome look like, right? That's the aspirational piece of it. If we really hit it out of the ballpark, what does awesome look like? And how outside of our comfort zone is it? A good key result is cross-functional by nature. It incorporates cross-functional teams. Going back to shared OKRs, right? When we create shared OKRs, we're creating OKRs that are best for the company, right? For the entire organization. Typically, we'll see teams that create OKRs based on line of business or based on organizational structure, right? And so typically we end up creating siloed OKRs, and we'll touch on that a little bit here when we look at shared OKRs. And last but not least, a good key result, it's always measurable, right? with that key result, we should always have some sort of finish line, some sort of definition that says that we've succeeded, okay? It's always measurable. A couple of examples here. Aspirational key result would be to grow our market share by 60% from 8% to 13%, right? So again, we've got those metrics that we've called out, and we've identified that key result. We are also very aspirational in terms of how we want to grow there, right? And last but not least, here we have a committed example of a key result where SOC 2 compliant, right, by the end of Q2. So just a couple of examples there on key results. All right, so let's take a look at some initiatives. So initiatives, these are the hands, right? These are the things that we do to achieve our key result. Essentially, that big giant list of tasks that we keep talking about, right? That list of to do, those are your initiatives. Your initiatives are the things that become our backlogs. Initiatives are those things that you work on from sprint to sprint to sprint, right? These are our epics, our user stories. That's what your initiatives are. So let's look at some examples of initiatives. So in this case here, we may have something like a 2-month free subscription campaign, right? Some sort of campaign that we give to all new users that sign up, right? So that may be an example of initiative. By the same token, we may have A/B testing a new sign-up flow as another initiative. That may be a product feature that we're doing. For example, maybe we have a high abandonment rate during the customer sign-up flow, and so maybe we want to develop 2 different flows to see if one performs better than the other, and so we may want to A/B test that, right? And then we may do a campaign to reacquire previous customers, right? Any of those customers that may have left us in the last 6 months or year, we may do a marketing campaign out to them to reacquire them, right? So just some examples of some initiatives there. Okay, so let's take a look at the different types of OKRs. You keep hearing me talk about the aspirational OKRs and the committed OKRs, right? Well, let's dig in a little bit deeper and see what's the differences between the two. So with your aspirational OKRs, those are your moonshots, right? That's the stretch part of the aspirational OKRs. There's about a 10% attainability there, right? So there is a high likelihood of failure, right? That we may end up missing that goal, but it's about taking those big risks, right? It's about identifying what does amazing look like. But with that failure comes tremendous learning, and that's the beauty in OKRs, is that when we get to the end of our OKR cycle, we reflect and we reset. And we look back on what we could have done differently throughout the cycle. What OKRs did we do well in? What OKRs could we have done so much better, right? What do we want to do differently going forward? What sort of learnings did we learn from this, right? And so that's the beauty of OKRs, is the learning piece of it. In contrast, you have committed OKRs, right? And those are intended to be 100% attainable, right? So what we've said is that we're committing to doing this. In some cases, you'll want to use committed OKRs in the case of contractual obligations or compliance, right? The SOC 2 compliance example that we did earlier. Things of that nature. Committed OKRs are good to use when teams need to focus on priorities and there's less opportunity there for failure, right? Less room for failure. So that's a good case for committed OKRs. But the one consideration and the one concern that you want to give to OKR or committed OKRs is that when we miss those OKRs, right? When we're unable to hit those goals, that may expose symptoms of greater concerns. And so when we're unable to hit those committed OKRs, we definitely want to potentially retrospect on that, right? Post-mortem, how come we missed that, right? So a little bit of a difference there between aspirational and committed OKRs. And one thing to take into account when you are creating your OKRs, you'll want to take into account the time to achieve that, right? The amount of commitment that the team can contribute, right? What does their velocity look like? How much capacity do they have? So on and so forth, right? And then your OKRs are not to be used for business as usual type of stuff. So when you're creating your OKRs, you'll want to take into account that business as usual stuff. That's the keep the lights on type of work, right? OKRs are meant to be aspirational and serve for a certain moment of time. So we've got the business as usual stuff, but then we also have our OKRs and the things that we want to do here, right? So a little bit of difference there between aspirational and committed OKRs. And here we're looking at annual OKRs versus quarterly OKRs, right? So the difference here is your annual OKRs, well, they're just that, right? They're longer in duration, and they've got that longer term vision. They typically reside at the company level, right? So that company level there. And they're synonymous with your strategic OKRs. So your strategic OKRs, we've thought through what our strategy is, and we've identified that, yes, these are our strategic OKRs, and those then become our annual OKRs, right? And so in contrast, though, we have our quarterly OKRs. Those are shorter in duration, right? They're typically limited to the length of that OKR cycle, which is typically a quarter. But it does encourage stretch thinking and game-changing risks, and that's because of that short duration, right? Because we've time boxed to a 3-month period, it allows us to really experiment during that time, and we may find that at the end of that 3-month period, yeah, it was awesome, right? Or it was a complete failure, right? But and in that case, when it is a complete failure, you know, we've only committed to 3 months, right? We haven't spent this long cycle of committing to something only to have it fail. So it encourages that stretch thinking. And typically it resides at the program and the team level, right? So because it is quarterly, it's typically in that line of business or at the team level within that line of business. And again, it's synonymous with your tactical OKRs, okay? So, all right, moving forward. So we've got our strategic OKRs as well as our tactical OKRs, right? So we talked about that. So your strategic OKRs, those are defined at the company level. Those are typically defined by your executive team, right? That C-suite that typically comes up with that strategy and the company OKRs, right, and so forth, right? So your strategic OKRs are typically defined at the C-suite level, at that executive level. Whereas your tactical OKRs, those are the quarterly OKRs that we're doing, right? They're in support of our strategic OKRs, so they typically live for that quarterly cycle. And then with our tactical OKRs, these are the things that become our backlogs, right? So these are that becomes those, you know, those initiatives that we talked about. This is how we execute. These are the tactics that we use, right? So, all right, and then we talked about siloed OKRs versus shared OKRs, right? And so what we're talking about here is that what most organizations do when especially if they're new to OKRs, they'll create OKRs based on their organizational structure, right? And so finance will create finance OKRs, marketing will create marketing OKRs, engineering will create engineering OKRs, et cetera, right? And that makes sense, right? I mean, typically that's how we're organized as an organization, right? That's how our company's structured. But the problem when we do that is that finance will create OKRs that are specific to finance. Marketing will create marketing goals. Engineering will create engineering goals, and so on and so forth, right? So what we've done is we've created siloed goals there. And the problem with that is that each silo works within their own silo, and they're only concerned with what's going on in that particular silo. And part of the problem with that, and the reason we get those siloed OKRs, is because at our C-suite, we're having conversations around what are the top 5 projects, right? What are the marketing goals? What are the product goals? Engineering goals, etc., right? So we're not talking what is best for the company. What are the company goals right now? Instead, we're talking about siloed goals and top 5 projects, right? But in contrast, when we adopt our OKR program and we're able to answer the question, why OKRs and why now, that leads to strategy. That leads to understanding why OKRs and why now. That leads to conversation around our mission and vision. And by the same token, that leads to the conversation around shared OKRs. What is best for the organization? What is best for the company right now? And then so what we end up doing is we identify that and we take that back to our teams. And we create OKRs that are shared across financing and marketing, engineering and marketing, product and engineering and marketing, etc., right? We're creating these horizontal goals there. And so that's the beauty in creating shared OKRs. So when we're creating our OKRs, ideally we want to be creating shared OKRs. So just a little bit of difference there between siloed OKRs and shared OKRs. But let's take a look at some examples. Okay, so here we're using the Synergita tool, And what we have here is we've got our company objectives that are our annual strategic OKRs, right? And so what we've identified using the use case that we've been using throughout the course is to become the market leader for small business financing, right? So that's going to be our annual strategic objective there. Our key results for that objective are going to be to grow our market share by 20%, to scale our tech stack by 30%, and to grow our product and engineering and marketing teams by 25%. So these are the key results that we've identified for the year. Okay, so how we execute on that is when we take it down a layer to our teams, right? So here we've got our product development team, and their goal is to be the product of choice for small business financing. And so they measure that through their key results in terms of converting 35% of freemium users to subscription, converting 10% of first-time users to subscription, and then improves the sign-up abandonment rate by 40%, right? So going back to the initiatives of running that A/B test, right, to improve maybe the abandonment rate, or converting first-time users to subscription. Maybe that's that 2 months free subscription thing that we were talking about, right? Those initiatives that we were talking about. So that's maybe something that we're doing at a product level, right, as part of our quarterly tactical OKRs. And here we have engineering OKRs for our quarterly tactical OKRs. And here we've got to build a kick-ass tech stack in support of being the market leader for small business financing, right? So that's what we have for our engineering teams. So how do we measure that? How do we know that we've hit this goal here? Well, we plan on reducing our technical debt by 40%. We're going to roll out Scrum to 25% of product and engineering teams, and we'll eliminate 100% of all bugs. I want you to notice one thing there. Eliminate 100% of all bugs. So when you're writing your key results, you want to give consideration to stuff like this. This is unattainable. You will never be able to eliminate 100% of all bugs, right? So be cautious with key results that are like this, okay? All right, and here we have our human resources OKRs for the quarter. And in this case, it's to be the employer of choice for the small business finance industry. And how we measure that? Well, we hire 3 kick-ass engineers in DevOps. We reduce the average lead time for vacancies by 35%. And we interview 100% of all new hires about their onboarding experience, right? And so this is how we develop visibility into how our employees are embracing us as an organization. Okay, so let's take a look at what we learned. All right, so we looked at why OKRs and why now, and the importance of organizations understanding that question when adopting the framework, right? Is it, are we adopting OKRs now because there's some opportunity in the market that we just can't miss, right? Is there a threat in the market that we need to protect ourselves from, right? Why is it that we're adopting OKRs, and why is it important in this moment, right? We also looked at some OKR definitions, the objective, right? We talked about how that is the qualitative goal, right? The heart. We looked at the key results as the head, right? That's the quantitative outcome. That's how we know that we've accomplished our goal, right? Because there's that metric that's associated with it. And then we talked about the initiatives, right? That being the hands, right? The activities, the things that we do, our backlog of items, our user stories, epics, right? These are our initiatives. These are the things that we do in order to meet our key results. And then we also looked at the different types of key results: aspirational and committed key results, annual and quarterly, and then strategic and tactical. And then we also took a look at our shared OKRs and the importance of creating shared OKRs, right? Creating horizontal OKRs that are shared amongst engineering, marketing, product, and so on and so forth, right? Versus those siloed goals that we often see with companies that are new to OKRs, right? And last but not least, we wrapped up with some examples of OKRs using the Synergy tools. So I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. We've got more videos on our site, so be sure you take a look. And in the meantime, if there's any questions that you have or you want to learn more about Synergita, visit synergita.com. And if you want to learn more about Apodaca Consulting, visit apodacaconsulting.com. Thank you for your time.